My name is Kelly Slessor, and I'm delighted to be hosting this event, brought to you by the City of Sydney and supported by the New South Wales Government's Business Connect programme. Before we start, I want to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, traditional owners of the land, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, as well as acknowledging that we are all here today on different lands, and so acknowledge the traditional owners of all lands from wherever you join us today. And it's an absolute privilege and honour to be able to do that. If this is your first Reboot session, welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so pleased that you've joined us. And if this is, if you've been here before, and I've seen a lot of familiar names in the list, welcome back. Thank you for coming back and supporting this. And I know you're going to get so much out of this session. Reboot is a series of 9 free business webinars developed by the City of Sydney and New South Wales Government's Business Connect programme to respond to the pandemic and to support businesses recover, rebuild, engage and grow their customers and revenue. These are weekly masterclasses with some of Australia's leading experts in their fields, and they're sharing knowledge on topics like digital, branding, content, storytelling, which we have today, financial planning and more. So if you've missed any, you can go back and rewatch them. And there's some more coming up. There has been a slight change to schedule. So there's 9 events in total happening every Tuesday from 12 to 1. And today's session is session 5, so 4 more to go. So get your spot booked in. There has been a slight change to schedule. So we've moved Sandra D and Sina from Nutty Donuts and St. Frock to the 24th, and my session, so you're lucky people, you've got me next week talking about how to get seen on Google, how to grow your Google rankings, or how to be seen in search engines, and how to use SEO to do that. So I'll be talking all things SEO, and don't worry if you don't know what SEO means or don't understand it, come along next week, I'll explain it all to you and get you ranking in search engines. So that's next week. Rachel will have dropped the link in the chat. The wonderful Rachel is organising everything in the back end, and she's an absolute gun. So thank you, Rachel. So she'll be dropping all the links in the chat. We've had over 300 people register for today's session, so I'm really excited to see you here today. The sessions are recorded and they'll be sent out on an EDM afterwards. They'll be sent on Thursday with a link to the recording. I'm so excited to bring you today's session. Honestly, my dad always used to say to me, surround yourself with great minds. And just watching these 2 people, stalking them literally, because I have had to stalk them to get them on today. They're 2 of the greatest minds. They're just phenomenal. So I'm going to introduce them properly in a minute, but this session is brought to you with myself, Wayne Quilliam and Ronny, or Professor Wayne Quilliam and Ronny Hermosa. And we're going to cover the importance of storytelling, because one of the fundamental things I think we miss in our channels and online is the art of storytelling and content creation. So we're going to cover the importance of that. We're also going to cover how to tell those stories through content. And then we're going to have a live case study session where Ronny will actually create some content for a business, architecture for kids, live in the session. So I'm super excited. Have I mentioned that I'm excited about this session? You might hear me say that a few times. There's a Q&A function which you can use on the webinar today. Please write your questions in there. We may not get to all of them or even the questions, because it's a big jam-packed session. If we don't, we will try and follow up in the email with answers to your questions. So please put the questions in there. The session is recorded, as I've mentioned. At the end of it, we'll post a survey. What we really love is feedback, how we can improve, what we can do better, and what you need from these sessions. So as much feedback as you can give will be really appreciated, and it will only take 2 minutes. Okay, here we go. This is it. I feel like there needs to be a drum roll. I'd like to intro you to Professor Wayne Quilliam. He's an Indigenous artist, a cultural consultant, a creative designer, a professional photographer, a cinematographer, and he has the largest Indigenous photo stock library in Australia. He's just done a documentary for the BBC. He's currently at Vicinity filming for them for an education program for kids. And so I'd like to bring him on. The second person we're super excited to have on today is Ronny Hermosa. Ronny is a Canva creator, a YouTuber, a community builder. He's ex-Canva. He's one of the only top 100 Canva creators. And we're very lucky to have him in Australia. Now, both of them, Wayne has been out in country filming. Ronny was about to move. So I've managed to stalk them and get them on today. So I'd like to bring them on and say hi. Hi, guys.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Kelly.
So much. Oh, I'm just going to unmute you, Wayne.
Why? I do everything by hand, so you don't need to hear me.
I want to create like Zoom t-shirts where it's like, please don't be a random unmuter, or you need to unmute, or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, it's a whole new channel. Thank you so much for joining me today, both of you. I am super grateful to have you here, and I know that everyone's going to get so much value for this. So I'm going to kick off with some questions, if that's okay, and just ask you a few questions around storytelling. One of the things that I think a lot of businesses, small businesses, struggle with is how to translate their stories. And Wayne, obviously, you know, you take imagery and turn it into beautiful stories every day. And Ronny, you're doing exactly the same thing. But can I ask you, why are stories and content so important to businesses in a digital world?
Ronny, I might start if you don't mind, brother.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, and thank you for that beautiful welcome to country, acknowledge the land we're on, and that's part of our storytelling. Me as an Aboriginal man, I'm a Palawa man from Tasmania, so I can't actually do a welcome to country. I do an acknowledgement when I'm on someone else's land. So I acknowledge the land that I'm currently on here in beautiful, sunny Melbourne down here today. So
nice.
Beautiful, beautiful country. So I acknowledge the land we are and pay respect to the elders, past and present. And that's a part of our storytelling, a part of how we've kept our culture alive, not only alive, but also is progressing our culture, is utilising storytelling, because in the past, we never had the written word, we never had video. It was done through, you know, people see cave paintings or bark paintings or art. It was never written down. Whereas today, now we're utilising every part of technology we've got available to continue those stories, record our past stories, and then encourage our youth to it's continuity in our culture and revitalisation of culture. That now is being translated into the digital and corporate world, where we're having a lot of people from all nationalities going, wow, what a beautiful, energetic and simple way of telling a story is by having a yarn. That's our common term, having a yarn. And that's what I'm here today, filming a corporate video, but not in the respect of just recording, but I actually get to know the people that I'm working with. I want to know, I'm actually genuinely interested in not only my own culture, but everyone else's culture. And just here in the room, we've got people from China, Malaysia, from, I think, Afghanistan and England. What an incredible journey and story that we can all share. Yeah. And I've got to learn also to be quiet, because I love to have a yarn. So what do you reckon, Ronny? You want to take over, brother?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for that cultural point of view. I really love that, because stories can be applied to so many different aspects of our lives, right? Me personally, I'm more on the business side of things, on the social media side of things and content creation. And I've noticed that stories are really a powerful tool to help us grab people's attention, because there is so much content out there and so much noise that brands and companies and organizations inevitably need to cut through that noise. They need to make their way to the consumers, to their target audiences. And stories is a very effective way to do that by first grabbing people's attention, by evoking emotions in people. So we move them, we transport them. Stories can also help people understand complicated concepts because we use metaphors or we use parables to make our points where sometimes the concept can be a little bit abstract. So for businesses, stories can also help incitate people to take actions because they have been feeling things thanks to our powerful storytelling. We have generated emotions, and therefore people will act on these emotions by taking an action. Could be as simple as clicking a button, or it can be volunteering for an organization because you've touched them with your story. So yeah, all of these things I believe are kind of like the why businesses and organizations, but I don't want to only focus on businesses. I've worked in the nonprofit world for about 10 years before joining Canva and being more on the corporate side of things. But yeah, I believe all of that is the why people and organizations use stories.
Yeah. And I love it goes back to that. Yeah, we used to sit around bonfires and have a yarn. We used to, and we used to go to coffee shops and have a yarn. And now we kind of live in this digital world where those yarns are happening in digital media. But at the moment, we're still very formal with it. We're still very, and it's like, you're going back to what you said, Wayne, like when I spoke to both of you, hearing your story, Wayne, about being in the army and hearing yours, Ronny, about the Fair Trade Company, all of a sudden there's just another connection point. There's another point where I go, you're a fascinating human being that I want to connect to. And I think in business, when we're running, especially because we've got, over 300 small businesses registered for this, in business, when we're running, I think sometimes we forget that. We forget that people want to see inside and understand what's behind and the connection point. And what we do is we copy and paste social stuff and we put it out there. So how do businesses, in your mind, how do we create better stories?
Yeah, I might go on that
or
one.
Tell. Go.
As a part of my journey is, starting off as a photographer, 30 odd years ago, is that my role was to tell a cultural story, to tell our people's story, to record and document it. And I didn't realise what I was actually doing it back in those days. Whereas now my business has transformed. I've transformed myself as a human being, as an individual, as an Indigenous man, into not only from the cultural aspect, but developing my business. So instead of just being a photographer, I've been teaching myself videography. I'm now a drone pilot, a cinematographer. Social content is not so much my strong point. Mine's more actually the area of recording and documenting, and then I give it to people who then share that. So I've learned to work in my business. I know what I'm good at. I try other avenues. I'm teaching myself editing at the moment. Absolutely terrible at it. I never even finished high school. So trying to do that it's not so much outside the scope of my business. I do need to learn it to progress. Because what I've found as an older man is that the young ones are now not only catching up, they're surpassing me in what they're doing, which I encourage. That's what I want them to do.
Yeah.
So my business has had to diversify, and I'm using storytelling, which is now being engaged by, in particular, the corporate sector, to go, wow, we want you to come on board and get down to the authenticity of who we are. It's great to do this fantastic big campaign, but what we find is the authenticity comes through, and what Ronny was saying before, all that noise. If you're true to yourself and you utilise storytelling, is that concept of getting your message, your story to not only your audience, but to whoever your business or your business targeting, be authentic. And I'm finding that's working personally for my business.
Yeah. And can I just pick up on that, Ronny? I'll come to you one second.
Yep.
Just pick up on that comment about you're not social content, but you're telling stories that have become social content. Like it just naturally becomes social content because of the stories you're telling and the visual way in which you're telling them. And maybe that kind of raised a question for me. Is it that we need to not think about social content as social content and think about the story that we're trying to tell?
I couldn't agree more, and that's the way. So I work on, in particular, Indigenous communities across the world, but mainly in Australia since COVID. And I know when I go out on country, so whether it's in Redfern in Sydney, well, last week I was up working with Jess Malboy up in, I'm just name dropping now. So
brilliant, love it.
But we were out there filming for Fashion Week coming up in Sydney in a few weeks, about a month's time. And the authenticity of Jess and her story, I wasn't telling her story. I was there to record who she was and how she interacted with the local mob out there, because that wasn't her country. So the first thing we went down to the art centre. We had a yarn to the local mob about who we are, what we were doing, making sure we were welcome on their country. They welcomed us. They then shared their stories with Jess, which I documented, which I now will share with everybody else.
Yeah, amazing.
So my role is more sharing what's captured and letting other people decide how they interpret the story.
Yeah, amazing. Ronny, over to you on that question.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I feel very connected to what Wayne is saying, because I have been doing kind of the same job with my nonprofit. I was traveling around the world and documenting the world of fair trade. So I was just going to different nonprofit projects and filming and taking photos. And I was collecting all of this information, but also because I was kind of like a one-person business or two-person business at the time, I had to do the editing. I had to do the photo corrections, the retouching, and then the using that raw material, as I used to call it, to produce the stories for social media. Wayne mentions that he has a team for that, so that's great. At the time, I was kind of doing from A to Z, and the final outcome being a post on social media or a video being delivered to a client who commanded us to go to Bangladesh and grab that story, grab that 3-minute videos. So for having kind of moved along the production line of the story, I can say, to answer the question, how do businesses create better stories? I see a couple of different important elements to this answer, to answer that question. The first one would be about authenticity. Definitely, if your story doesn't sound real, if people can sense that you're telling a story for the sake of telling a story because you know it's trendy, because you know you have to do it, and at the end of the day, I know what you're trying to do. If this can be perceived in your story, in your narrative, it's better not to tell any story. If you're going to tell a story, be genuine and don't think about selling, think about your message and how you can craft that message in the best way possible. So how do businesses become and find their authenticity is by really doing the hard work of defining who they are as an organization, as a business. So defining your mission, your vision, your why, being super clear on all of this before even starting to tell stories, because this will be the fundamentals that you absolutely need to tell an authentic story, to understand where the story is coming from. So that would be, for me, the first element that I bring to this question, like how to tell better stories, to really understand your why and what your brand stands for. Then when this hard fundamentals is done, then you can move to the production of the stories. And I would say there, like today, in this day and age, companies have basically 4 choices. Like you can tell your story with text, you can tell your story with images on Instagram or on the visual platforms. You can tell your story with audio, like that would be a podcast, or you can tell your story with videos, which is what I do best at the moment. So there are these 4 big categories of formats, if you will. And then each of them has its own art. Like if you write if your medium is writing, so you will create articles, use platforms like Medium or LinkedIn, or your website, and you will have to become a master at writing. So you will have like your structure for your blog post with an interesting hook and short paragraph, and then a call to action, maybe some visuals to illustrate. So each of the disciplines, I would call them, or format, will have their specific set of rules. If you create videos, then you have long form videos, short form videos, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. So the platform also kind of dictates the format and the way you will tell and shape your story. So we could go very deep into this, but I would say, first, know yourself as a business, like know what you stand for. And second, choose your format. Pick one of the 4 formats. And this needs to be
really good at
based on 2 things, like what you do best, what you are naturally good at. And the second is where your audience is already hanging out. If you know your audience is on TikTok, then you probably need to get into short form video content. So that would be my answer
understanding
to
your
the
customer
question.
persona. Awesome. And I totally agree. It's understanding who you are as a business. And I think a lot of us start businesses and we want to make money, or we start businesses and we've got a vision for what the business wants to be, but we don't take the time to actually work on who we are as a business or who we are as a person and what that story is that we want to tell, the things that we want to achieve. And then I find actually the people with the biggest disconnect between their digital channels and what they actually do. It's amazing the amount of people I get on calls with, and I'll talk about their business and we'll talk about why they founded it. And then I look at their digital channels and I'm like, there is a complete disconnect there. I get this passion and they're so disconnected. And that's because they haven't told that story in their content. Wayne, I just want to ask, when you're like you're doing videos today and you're talking about Jessica Malboy, great name to drop. What's the process you go through to connect with them? I know you mentioned, the situation you've just been, but if it was like a small bit, what were some of the questions you'd ask them to bring out that kind of story?
And that's probably the key to what I do and why I do it and why I'm good at what I do, is because it's the personal knowledge that I really want to know. Each individual person that I'm talking to, I'm generally interested. And I find a common cause. So let's say we use two examples. So one example is I was in a remote community last week. A lot of kids, a lot of them are quite rambunctious and motivated and running around. And so to sort of bring them back in to have a yarn to them is that I'll look at the clothes they're wearing. I'll look at what they're doing. Some kids are AFL mad. So all of a sudden, say, hey, who do you follow? Who do you like in football? It's that personal association with who they are and what they're interested in. All of a sudden they'll stop. And I'll say, I'm a Richmond supporter. Richmond are no good. And then they'll open up. They'll start to talk to me about it. And then once I've got them, then I sort of develop that bit of a relationship. And it's so beautiful because you then learn about the person. I do exactly the same in the corporate world. If I'm working, I recently did a corporate video with BHP. There's a couple of senior execs, and you can walk in, and it is, the suit and tie, the flash officers, the whole thing. I still approach it exactly the same way. I come in, I will talk to that person the same as I'm talking to a kid out in a remote community. But I'll walk into their office and I'll look around. And go, okay. I notice over on one wall, maybe there's, and I saw this gentleman's wall is, it looked like he'd been to Africa a fair bit. And then he was telling the story about actually that's where he started his career, working in that part of the world. And I was generally interested in it. And as he started to talk about it, we got to know each other a little bit better. So he knew a little bit about my story. I knew a little bit about his story. We sat there, I put the camera on and said, brother, let's just have a yarn. I've got the questions and we will need to address them, but let's have a yarn first.
Yeah.
He went, okay. And we just talking about things. And then I said, okay, we've got to do the questions. He went, Ruby. And he was relaxed. And we got these beautiful stories. I approach every single project exactly the same way, not necessarily getting the same result, but you know.
Yeah, yeah. So is
Works.
it, if I were to sum that up, it's you've got to get curious. To create good content, you've got to be curious.
Very curious. And sometimes there's things there that are quite not on your, as I say, in your wheelhouse.
Mm-hmm.
But funnily enough, some of those things that you go into that you really thought was maybe not that interesting turns out to be gems. The information, a classic example yesterday, I was in South Australia, and I'm going to do a little promotion here if you don't mind. I own what's the first ever Indigenous owned wine company called Mount Yengo. Yesterday, my business partner and I flew over to Adelaide, and we had 3 places we're creating content to tell our story later this month in Sydney down at the Rocks. So we went to the grower who grew our grapes. Now I thought, oh, this guy just grows grapes. But all of a sudden, the story about the grapes, the bushfires, how he's had to regenerate, it was fascinating. We then moved up to the bottling plant at Yalumba where we bottle our wine. And the process, even standing with a guy on the process line about putting the corks in the champagne, sparkling. It was fascinating about how it worked. And finally, we went then to our winemaker who will make the wine. I honestly thought that, well, you pull the grapes, you put them in vats, you pick the right grapes and made wine. The scientific process in it it was mind-boggling.
Mm.
So I wasn't sure whether some of the stories would be that interesting for me personally. It blew me away again.
Yeah. It's like you said, it's when you get in deeper than that kind of surface level of just having what does your business do, that you start to bring out these amazing stories. So I'm going to go off track a little bit here and just throw something out into the group, because I've noticed people are putting in the chat things that they do. Like Trixie's put in, I inspire adults to teach their kids to sew through posting free sewing tutorials and running global events. I would love for all of you to put in the chat who you are, what you're doing, and just a little sentence on your story. I will find a way to relay that back at some point and put that into some content that we can share. Because I'm the same, like stories touch my heart and I love hearing about the person behind the business. And I think, as Ronny said, that's the stuff we've got to bring out more. That's the stuff we need to make it more engaging. Can you share some examples of great brands or small businesses that that are telling great stories or telling their great story? Fiona, Chocolate on Purpose. She was on our first group. She's an amazing woman. But can you share some stories of brands or small businesses that are telling great stories?
Yeah, maybe I can start on this one. I thought a little bit about this different levels of storytellers. Okay, so the highest level would be a big corporation and how they tell their story. So if we take, for example, let's take an example that was in the news recently, Airbnb. Airbnb recently announced a set of measures that they are taking for their employees, allowing them to work from anywhere in the country, allowing them to work from home, coming to the office, a very flexible work policies. And I love that they are highlighting this kind of like a corporate announcement, like it's a decision, could have stayed internally, but because Airbnb is all about like trying different homes, like working in remote places, adventure, like trying something new, something different, and traveling, they decided to make it a big thing and to kind of put themselves as one of the pioneers of remote work and pushing the remote working policies and environment to the next level by allowing their employees even to travel around the world and keep working and being paid the same salary. So I found that announcement that I found on LinkedIn yesterday or the day before yesterday super interesting, because they found a way to tie it back to their mission. And so that would be like the corporate level of storytelling. Then if you go down a notch, let's say you want to talk about a content creator someone who is running a smaller scale business, but still a very successful business on YouTube, for example. We have someone like Peter McKinnon, who is a photographer, vlogger, who has been very popular on YouTube. And what Peter McKinnon does is he just tells a story. Like he gets on the camera and then he will tell you for 14 minutes about why he was so passionate about making leather wallets before starting to make YouTube videos. And he has this very visual way of telling a story. He will be showing you some B-rolls of his workshop in his garage and the different types of leather that he has. And then he will make a cup of coffee and they will be super visual. And it just keeps you watching because you want to see what's next because of the way he brings up the story, the different stages of the story, the story narrative, like the arc of the story. So I would say these are two very different businesses. One is like a multi-billion business with thousands of people working, and the other one is maybe just Peter McKinnon and maybe one or two other people working with him, but they're using stories to really, I would say, bring up their brand and craft and tie it back to their core mission, their core purpose. Peter McKinnon is to grow on YouTube and to put forward his photography business, and Airbnb to get more people to use Airbnb, or to have a more I would say nomadic lifestyle and encourage that kind of lifestyle. So yeah, those are two examples. I could go on like this.
I know, I love it. I love it. And do you know what? I love the Airbnb one as well, because Airbnb do a little ad, which feels like it was shot on an iPhone, and it's two old people and they've got Beyonce playing in the background. And it's so random. You don't even know you're watching an Airbnb ad. And it just feels like this really odd ad, but it's so emotionally engaging that you can't take your eyes off it. Look up the latest Airbnb ad. I just want to read out a couple of these. Donna from Verco is an interior design consultant, filling the place between decoration and designs. Love working with designs for children. You've got Judith is on a learning journey to write and learning to paint. You've got, I saw someone in there, my weapon of distraction are hula hoops, but I also dabble in other circus manipulation. You have won today, the best storytelling, kids yoga teacher facilitator. I love these. Thank you so much for sharing. We will download these and read them later. But before, and without any further ado, what I want to do is, this is very much a hands-on workshop. So Ronnie's actually going to create some content for us. We're going to invite Louise on just to give a quick overview of her business. She put her hand up as a case study last week. Anyone wants to be a case study on mine, put your hand up, fill in the survey. Next week I'll do a complete SEO review for you. Hi, Louise, how are you?
Hello.
Yeah, good. Thanks. Nice to see you all. Thanks so much for having me.
Lovely to have you on. Do you want to just quickly introduce your business, and then Ronnie's going to take you through and design some content?
Yeah, great. I'm actually at TAFE today. So I'm a design educator and an architect and an interior designer. And I started AFK Architecture for Kids School during COVID because I saw kids were stuck at home and that creativity could make them happy. And creativity's made me happy personally. And I thought I'd share my love of design for kids. And it's really grown. I've got kids all over the world joining me. And I basically give them an hour where they meet other kids who are like them and like me. And we just create and have lots of fun and look at the built environment.
I love it. I absolutely love it. All right, over to you, Ronnie. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. Nice to meet you. How much time do I have?
You've got about
Kelly?
20 minutes. 20 minutes.
Okay, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So I'm going to share my screen right here. Okay. There you go. So you should see my presentation right here. I want to give you a tiny bit of context before I jump into Canva. So let me quickly go through my slides. I have prepared a little bit of context to really understand why we need to stop the scroll, how we will remain on brand and why this is important. And then we will jump into Canva and talk about how we can start designing with a template or adding movement to our design. So let's start by stopping the scroll. What does that mean and why it is important? Well, basically, I have a harsh statement here. We have 0.05 seconds to make a positive first impression. So this might seem like a very little amount of time, but it is so true. And I will come back to this in a second. But first of all, why are we all here today? Why are we attending this workshop? Why are we talking about storytelling? If we go to the bottom of it, it's probably because you guys have a message that you want to convey to a specific audience. Okay, so that's pretty much the lowest level where we can dig of the why you're attending this webinar. So if you have a message to tell to your audience, let's talk about that audience. Who is that target audience and how are they coming across your stories? Where there's a good chance that your target audience looks pretty much like this. So they are consuming your content on their mobile phone, probably on the go, and they have a very short attention span because they are on the go. They might be in the subway, they might be in a waiting room, or they might be watching TV or talking to someone else or commuting somewhere. So their attention span is very limited. And there's a very good chance that these people are also on social media. And this is where they will find your content, okay? By the way, did you know that that people spend an average of 2.5 hours every day on social media? So why am I telling you this? Because if you want your message to be heard, you absolutely have to put it in relevant places. And to me, social media is the most relevant place for you to put your content. This is not by me, this is from Gary Vee, which is someone I really admire and consider as a mentor. So if you want to reach people with your message, you need to exist on social media. Okay. The problem on social media is that it's a very crowded place. Okay. So there is so much information on social media that it's very difficult to cut through that noise. Okay. To cut through that noise. It is very difficult to get people to pay attention to your message because they are doing 100 different things at the same time. Hence the importance of becoming a master at creating a first impression. This is probably the one thing I would love you to remember from my little intervention today in this workshop and what we will be designing in Canva. You have to become very good at making a positive first impression, because making a positive first impression is what will allow you to stop the scroll, okay? And that's what we want. So how do you do this? Well, there's a golden rule. You need to create visual content. You need to make it super visual. Why? Because our brains process images 60,000 times faster than words. So don't even bother crafting the perfect headline if you don't have a good visual, because people will scroll, and if you don't stop, oh, what is this? And then they read the headline, they read the caption, but you need to first stop and grab their attention with a visual. Okay, so make it visual, because visuals are great for people to remember your message. Visuals are great for inspiring people to take action because they will be moved by your visual. Your visual will evoke some emotions which will lead to action. Okay, and also our visual perception of the world is what we use to form our opinions. And people will judge you or your organization or your business very quickly based on their first impression. Okay, so I'm not going to elaborate too much on this. I think it's common sense. I think we all understand, but I feel like we needed to go through this piece of content. We need to create a highly visual brand, which leads me to my point number 2. I have 2 simple points today. The first one is you need to stop the scroll. And the second one is you need to remain on brand. What does that mean? So how do you create on-brand content if you're not a designer? And what is a brand? Okay, so a brand, according to Jeff Bezos, is what people say about you when you're not in the room.
I
So
love that quote. It's one of my favorite quotes of all time.
I always use this quote as well. And this is so true. Like, it is a perception, it is a feeling, it is the sum of what people feel when they come into contact with something related to your business, piece of content, an ad, or your website. They have a feeling, they should have a feeling, and that is your brand. Okay, so it is a combination of the values you stand for, your purpose, your personality, etc., etc. And within that brand, there is a specific thing which has to do with visual, and it is called your visual identity. Okay, and your visual identity is usually made out of your logo, your typography, your colors, and your imagery or your imagery style. So this is where I stopped the theory bit. Okay, I felt like this was super important before we jump into Canva, because I will be designing with that in mind. Okay, specifically this last slide, we are going to use AFK, or Architecture for Kids School, which is Louise's business, and see how we can leverage this to create great content with Canva. So let me quickly jump into Canva right here. Okay, so you should see my Canva homepage right now with all my personal designs. I have been given this presentation from Louise. Okay, so I think this is a PowerPoint that Louise had, and I could discover very quickly what Architecture for Kids is all about, and also sustainability for kids. So I kind of discovered here two different projects, one where we talk about architecture, and the other one about sustainability, tiny homes, designing in the Minecraft environment. So this is super interesting. And I was delighted to see this, this PowerPoint, because it's so bright, so colorful. So I really love the work on the visual identity here. So what did I do with this? Okay, well, first, Canva gives us a great tool to create that visual identity, to create a brand kit, which will help us then later create much faster in Canva. So if you go and start from the Canva homepage right here, there is this section right here that says brand kit. So I'm going to click on that, and you can see as a Canva Pro user, so Canva Pro is the paid version of Canva, I have the ability to create multiple brand kits. So you would see here brand kit for my personal brand, for my YouTube channel, and I created a brand kit for AFK. So this is what it looks like. I can upload some logos. I can grab some colors. So I did that from the PowerPoint that was given to me. I just grabbed the colors. So to create a color, very simply, you can click on the plus sign right here, and you paste the hex code, and you get a color. Okay, so what I did, I just grabbed them from here in Canva, so I could have the exact colors of the project. I'm going to delete this one. And I've also noticed that there is a slightly different color palette for AFK and for SFK, Sustainability for Kids and Architecture for Kids. Might be wrong, but that's the impression I got. SFK uses this darker green, a slightly different shade of pink as well. So I went ahead and created these two color palettes. You can create as many color palettes as you want in your brand kit, okay? And you can also discover pre-made color palettes from Canva. There's thousands of palettes, literally. And I also went ahead and created a neutral color palette right here, okay? So uploaded the logos, created the color palettes, and I also, the Canva brand kit gives you the ability to create your text hierarchy. So I can decide, I can preset what my headings would look like, what my subheadings would look like, and what my body text, my text body will look like. So I didn't have the exact font that Louise is using on her website or on her Instagram or on her visuals, as a matter of fact, but I tried to find something close, and I came up with this one, which is Agrandir Medium. I put this in size 33 for my headings. And then I went ahead and used agrandir for my subheadings and public sans for the body text. So not sure this is the exact same font, but as a business, you will have all your color palette. Usually you'll have your logos and you will have your corporate fonts or the specific fonts you are using if you don't have a custom font for your business. So that is the first step. That is the step that will allow me to basically have this visual identity very cemented and very strictly defined, so I can use that in my designs, because I want to be using the same colors so that people remember when they see my post, when they come across or when they come in contact with my brand on social media. Oh, this is AFK. I remember this style. Just like when you see an Airbnb ad, or when you see that red color, or when I tell you Facebook, you immediately have a color coming to your mind. When I tell you Twitter, you see the light blue color. When I tell you Coca-Cola, you see the intense red color. Same here. That's what we're trying to do. You only achieve that by creating this consistency with your visual identity. So that's step number one. Let's create our brand kit. Now, step number two is we start to create content. So let me come back to my homepage right here in Canva. And I'm going to go to my templates tab right here on top. Clicking on templates, I notice by having a look at the website, at the Instagram for the school, and also the YouTube channel, I noticed that Louise creates content around 3 or 4 different pillars. So some are parents' testimonial, like the first one right here, okay? Then we have content about Minecraft, because I believe there are some workshops where kids can create buildings and environments within the Minecraft platform. There is content about tiny houses and sustainability. And then there's a bunch of content about the content or the actual workshops being delivered. So it can be the outcome of a workshop, or simply kids working during the workshop. So I've seen a lot of that on the Instagram. And also there's a mix of some stock images, like this one, for example, this one probably stock image as well. So I can see a mix of different things. So knowing this and coming back to Canva, I will be starting to search for templates, because in my opinion, this is one of Canva's strongest points, is to be able to start inspired with a template. There are hundreds, literally millions of templates in Canva that I can use and tweak. And when you create your brand kit, you can tweak and make these templates on brand in only one click. And I will show you how to do this in a second. So how do you start your search? Well, I'm going to start by searching for an Instagram post. So I'm going to click on this tile right here that says Instagram post. I can see 360,000 templates. So how do I find the good ones? Well, if I come back to this presentation, I could see that SFK, or Sustainability for Kids, uses a lot of organic shapes. You see all these shapes look organic. They look like plants. And the other one, Architecture for Kids, uses more like geometrical shapes. So these are 2 different keywords I could use to refine my searches here. So I'm going to type in geometrical. Okay, I did that. And now let's filter by Instagram post. I see 550. Let's do that. And now I have a selection of Instagram post templates using geometrical shapes. All I need to do is to find the ones that I could use for my brand. This one looks a lot like what I've seen in the presentation. So I can start using it by clicking on it, or I can star it. You see this little star? Let's star this. I'm going to star a few different templates, and starring them will allow me to quickly come back to them later. Okay, so I like this one as well. This could be useful for my content creation needs. So I'm going to star it as well. Just simply scrolling here, trying to find a couple more templates that I could use to create my content. This one could be nice. This one also nice. Let's use this one that uses a photo. And maybe one last one. Yeah, maybe this one. Okay, I've started 4 different templates. I will show you in a minute where you can find them. Now I want to start tweaking the first one. So this one right here, if I click on it, I will have a preview of this specific template. I can see the color palette being used. I can see the fonts being used, little description. Okay, I'm good with this. I'm going to go ahead and customize this template. So Canva will open it in the editor and we can start tweaking. But remember, we created our brand kits. So now we can make this whole template on brand, carrying the colors that we set in our brand kit in just one click. For that, you will want to find this little button right here, this tab that says Styles. Let's click on that. So the Styles button will give us a few different options. Pro users, Canva Pro users will be able to use their brand kit. You see this little arrow? If I click here, I can switch between the different brand kits that I have set up in Canva. Let's use the AFK brand kit. And now I have the 3 different color palettes here. If I click on this one, look what's happening with the template. So immediately it's on brand. I can shuffle some more if I want to try different combinations. But yeah, this is already like saving me a bunch of time. I don't have to change every single little shape here. And same with the fonts. I can click on my set fonts that I preset in my brand kit and make this pretty much on brand. So now all I have to do is to swap the content, maybe add my logo. Remember, I added the logo in my brand kit as well, so I can find it here under my logos. So let's say AFK, but here I have green on green. So ideally, I would like to change the color of this logo. I can do that by going to Edit Image, and I will use this app called Duotone, which will allow me to set a duotone effect. It's a little hack that I have. So let's apply this one, but then I can use the sliders here and just change both of the colors here to white. I will apply this. Now my logo is turned white. So I can really easily change the color of anything pretty much with this duotone effect. Okay, I have one piece of content ready for social media. Obviously, I need to change the copy. I'm not going to do this for the sake of saving time, but let me create another post quickly. Remember, we saved our like different templates under the star folder where I can find my starred elements right here. If I click here, I can see the other templates that I saved. So I can bring them on to my editing page here. So let's bring the 3 of them immediately here. And I can start tweaking. I can start using this in a similar way. So going back to my styles right here, let's say this one is going to be for the other project, the SFK project. I can use this color palette. Again, I can shuffle until I find something that I'm happy with. Okay, something like that. I have this lady right here. Let's see what this photo is all about. So if I right click on the photo and I detach the image, okay, I can see it's an image that has been dropped into a frame here, which is a frame. Let's delete the photo. It's a frame with a nice little like organic cutout right here. So frames are something very interesting in Canva. Okay, frames are pretty much placeholders where I will be able to drop photos like this tiny house, for example, that I found on the Canva library. Actually, the frame is not perfect for that specific case, but I could also drop a video. See, this is a video that I found of a lady walking in what seems to be a tiny house. I can put a video in a frame. And when I export this post as an MP4 file and upload that to Insta, this will be a video in my Instagram feed. So frames are really interesting. I can delete it again. Let me show you another powerful feature from Canva. I found on the presentation this photo of Louise. Okay, so I have this, but it has this, green background. I would like to try to get rid of the background. Well, Canva Pro offers users a very powerful, that's my favorite Canva feature. It's called the background remover. which allows me to get rid of that background in only one click. So I will select the photo, go to edit image, use the background remover, and then Canva will do its thing. It will process for a second or two, and then boom, get rid
That's one of my favorite tools.
Yeah, the background. I would just apply this. And now I have Louise's photo right here. I can tweak the photo some more. So with the photo selected, you can go to your adjust. And then you have a bunch of different options as well. Like we could go very funky and use the duotone. We could like do some trippy effects. I'm not going to do any of that. I'm just going to slightly enhance the photo by going to my adjust settings. So boosting the brightness, boosting the contrast a little bit, maybe reducing the saturation a bit. Yeah, so we can play around like so with the photo. And then once it's ready, I can bring it back to my template right here. So let me jump into grid view. I'm going to move this one right here. I'm going to make this frame just white, like so. Reduce the photo slightly and bring it here. Okay, can detach the photo from the frame. And if you hold your command key while moving the photo over the frame so it doesn't snap into the frame, you can create something like that.
That's amazing. That's great.
A little bit like this. And then in that frame, you can drop whatever you like. If you want a cool gradient, you can go and find it under your element. You can search for, I don't know, like a pink gradient, filter by photos, try to find something nice like this, and you drop it in the frame.
Perfect.
So always try to remain on brand with your content by using the styles. Remember, so we set up our brand kit. So we have our brand colors, our fonts, everything. Then we can use that and tweak every single template that we find in Canva. Like this one, for example, I just click one click of a button, actually 2 clicks, and it's already on brand.
Amazing.
So,
amazing, Ronnie. Thank you. That's so good. Are you happy to share that with Louise?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I will definitely.
There you go. Free content, Louise.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just some great little hacks, and I'm sure if you're not a Canva user already, it just in terms of taking that story from your head into great content that looks amazing, that people want to stop and not scroll past. They are some great little hacks that you can use. I'm conscious of time because we're at 1 o'clock, but I could literally spend all day with Wayne and Ronnie. You can jump onto Ronnie's YouTube channel, and he gives lots of tips and tricks on there and some hacks. And obviously Wayne's Instagram account is amazing, and he's doing lots of content at the moment, documentaries and things. So jump on that as well. I want to say thank you so much. I want to thank the City of Sydney and New South Wales Government's Business Connect programme for putting these events on. If there were any questions, we will follow up and answer them. I want to thank Professor Wayne Quilliam, who I think we lost because I think he had a bit of an issue with connectivity. But I want to thank him and Ronny Hermosa. You're both absolutely insanely amazing. And I really hoped you enjoyed the webinar. I look forward to seeing you all next week. Don't forget, change your schedule for next week. My session is in this schedule. Rachel has dropped my session link in the down below, and also fill in the survey. Ronny, thank you so much.
Thank you.
People, thank you so much for attending. Just a big shout out. Everyone, drop a thanks in the chat for Ronny. Have the best week, and I will see you all personally next week. Thank you. Bye.